I wrote a book called The Clintons' War on Women in 2015. The longest chapter in the book is entitled Orgy Island. So when I wrote that book, I had obtained all of the FAA manifest records to show who flew in Epstein's plane and where they went. I also obtained a copy of the little black book that was Epstein's telephone book. Had been sold by Epstein's butler. See, it's always the butler that did it. The butler sold it to a New York journalist who shared it with me. But not everybody in the telephone book was guilty of any illegal or inappropriate activity, although some were. I am totally in agreement with Massey and his colleague. They're going to be very upset when they see who went to the island because they're all Democrats. Bill Clinton, there at least 4 times. I know that because I read the sworn testimony of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, and I interviewed her directly for 6 hours in 2 3-hour sessions. Larry Summers, the former Treasury Secretary, he was a regular on the island. Bill Richardson, the governor of New Mexico, he went there several times. Don't think it was for the weather. Bill Gates, he was on the island. He's a big Democrat donor. So name me a Republican who's on the island. There is no answer to that because the answer is none.
All right, guys, I hope you had a good Labor Day weekend. Thanks for everyone who tuned in. We've had a great couple days on the show. Big replay yesterday with Robert Cahaly. He crushed it. And it was so insightful to talk about what polling matters and what doesn't, and how you can kind of see fake poll and cheap bad polls versus good ones. So, and then obviously we had a great rant over the weekend. If you guys aren't subscribing, hit the subscription and notification button, because we drop these videos over the weekend that are on a specific subject that don't necessarily fit in the show. And this one on mortgage fraud this weekend was a huge hit. It was a huge hit. And I'll talk about this in just a minute with the amazing Roger Stone. It's amazing Democrats are now caught red-handed on mortgage fraud. Literally, their signatures are on multiple documents that we can all see for ourselves. And the media and the Democrats continue to be like, what? I mean, it's not like subjective. When you sign a form in 2 different states saying each one is your primary residence, in the case of Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, she's now done it 3 times. And remember, it's a crime because you're getting a lower interest rate, you're paying less on insurance, and you're probably putting less down payment down. That's not fair. I own investment property. I wasn't able to do that. Why does she get to do it? And frankly, she's a Fed governor. That's just her job, is to regulate mortgage rates. But take a look at that clip if you want. We've got a big September coming your way. I mentioned this on Friday and on Monday. I'm trying to go through my Rolodex, call in all sorts of friends and favorites. So stay tuned, because I really want to bring you guys insight ahead of the big elections in November, the government shutdown coming up potentially as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year, and all of these big political issues, by bringing on guests and having conversations that you'll see someone nowhere else. And today is going to be another one of those. Roger Stone is here, and Vice President Vance actually gave us a great insight into why he's such a great guest. Take a listen to the Vice President.
Roger Stone, who's a very one of the smartest political minds. Roger Stone was persecuted. People forget he's actually a brilliant political analyst.
Yeah, he's a brilliant political analyst, and that's what we got. By the way, over the weekend, our thoughts and prayers went out to America's mayor, Rudy Giuliani, who's in a car accident in New Hampshire. I talked to Andrew, his son, over the weekend. It sounds like he's on the mend and doing well. President Trump last night announcing that he's going to award the Medal of Freedom to Rudy Giuliani. That is pretty cool, and at a time and place to be known later. By the way, this is going to be a big month. The D.C. crime federalization is going to end next week. Then the president's going to the UK for this big state visit on the 17th of November. On the 23rd of September, yes, that is my birthday, but there's also 3 other big things happening. The Fed is going to meet. We'll see if we have 1 or 2 new governors by then. The UN is going to meet. President Trump's going to meet, give a speech there. And I believe that there'll be the beginnings of an outline of a Trump-Xi from China meeting discussed on the sidelines of that with Secretary Bessent and the Chinese premier. And then Kamala's brand new book actually comes out that day. So a busy deal. The end of the year is September 30th. A lot of government funding coming there. And then we've got these big international summits, APEC and ASEAN, I believe, probably at the one in Korea that Trump and Xi will meet in that ASEAN meeting. So keep an eye. We got a big month coming your way. As I said, Roger Stone is here tomorrow. A great conversation with Jessica Milan Patterson. She's the former Republican chairman in California who's leading the effort to stop redistricting on Gavin Newsom. Ian Pryor is going to be here as well. He is going to discuss what's going on in Virginia schools as we kick off back to school. It's unbelievable. An amazing panel on Thursday. Matt Cook, Michelle Baucus, and Tony Katz. And then Friday, we're going to get some insightful polling from Chris Wilson. So a lot going on. Before I bring you Roger Stone, though, I have made sleep part of the cornerstone of my wellness journey, as you guys know. Every night I take my Beam Dream powder, but more importantly, I switched out all the bedding. I switched over to Boll Branch sheets, and oh my gosh, what a difference. It feels like I'm staying in some like fancy hotel every night now. From the first night that I tried them, I could tell the difference in quality, and I'm not kidding when I told you after the first night, my wife literally said, order a second sheet. Get a second set of these, rather. The sheets, the top, the pillowcases, it's that amazing of a night's sleep. So I used my own money, my own promo code, which I'll share with you in just a second. You'll sleep more cooler. They're breathable. It's this organic cotton, and they've got a 30-night guarantee. So if you don't agree, and I don't know why you wouldn't, I get really hot when I sleep. These things are breathable. I love them. It's a durable weave, and I trust me, I'm like, I know the difference, and I love these things. I've already got my second set. I may have to go for a third at some point, but I never want to be without them. So if you go to bollandbranch.com/Spicer, and it's Boll, BOLLAND spelled out branch, bollandbranch.com/Spicer, you get 15% off and free shipping. So this is a deal that you want to take advantage of. Make an investment in yourself and get these Boll and Branch sheets. Go to bollandbranch.com/Spicer. You've got to use that URL to get the deal. All right, before I bring in Roger Stone, let me tell you about another great guy, my buddy Leo Grillo. You've heard me talk about him before. Leo is the chairman and founder of Delta Rescue. He started with one Doberman and then built an amazing, amazing facility. DeltaRescue.org. You can see it all. You can see the videos. He takes in abandoned, malnourished, mistreated, abandoned, abused animals of all shapes and sizes. Dogs, cat, horses, you name it. This thing has grown so big. It's the world's largest no-kill sanctuary. Sanctuary for life. This isn't a shelter. They're not trying to rehouse them or get them adopted. Leo Grillo and the folks at Delta Rescue take care of these animals for life. They don't get any government funding, though. No big grants, no USAID funding. It's all our contributions that sustain them. I've made a personal contribution to Delta Rescue because I believe in the work of Leo Grillo and Delta Rescue. Go to deltarescue.org to make a personal contribution and join me in doing that. And while you're there, check out that estate planning kit. If you can help make Leo this an enduring mission to keep Delta Rescue going for generations, please think about it. Maybe even an old 401k or a stock. Go to deltarescue.org to join me in helping out the great work of Leo Grillo. Without further ado, I want to bring in Roger Stone, the host of the Stone Zone and a political icon of all sorts. Roger, good to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Sean, great to be back with you as always.
So we had some tragic news over the weekend that our buddy Mayor Giuliani was in a car accident. It looks like he's okay. I know you've spent some time with him recently. I think you were out in Vegas doing a show with him talking about the mayors. President Trump last night announcing that he's awarding the Medal of Freedom to Mayor Giuliani. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, Sean, actually, I was a volunteer in Rudy Giuliani's first campaign for mayor. He was elected mayor on his second try. And of course, he is and continues to be the greatest mayor in New York City history. When Rudy Giuliani was elected mayor, they thought New York City was hopeless, that it could never be an economic powerhouse again. The streets could never be clean or safe again. He proved them wrong. Michael Bloomberg was a pretty good mayor. That's because he continued the policies of Rudy Giuliani. And then, of course, they elected Bill de Blasio, and it's been nothing but downhill since there. So just based on that accomplishment alone, he goes down in the history books. But the worst part here is the way he has been persecuted for playing the role of a lawyer, standing up and protecting the interests of his client, in this case, Donald Trump. The hell that they have put him through, trying to take his legal license, trying to fine him millions and millions and millions of dollars. For what? Because he represented his client in the 2020 election, which we see every day increasing evidence of anomalies, irregularities, and outright fraud. The man is very much like the president in terms of the level of his energy and his persistence. At 80 years old, he could be on the beach someplace enjoying himself, and instead he's right there in the fight. I spoke with him, as you point out, in Las Vegas the other day. We did a great interview. In fact, I think because of he's laid up, they reran the interview last night.
They did
record numbers. I was kind of proud of that. So he's a great man. He's a good man. He's been a friend for a long time. And this honor is really, really deserved. As badly as General Flynn has been treated, as badly as I have been treated, as badly as the president has been treated, almost nobody has been treated as badly as Rudy Giuliani. What did he do? He represented the interests of his client. One other thing, during that dispute, I watched him give a summation to the Pennsylvania State Senate without a single note. It was one of the most brilliant orations I have ever seen. So anybody who thinks Rudy Giuliani is missing a step doesn't understand him.
Oh my gosh. By the way, they did rerun that segment last night, which is, I was watching it. I was taken by your critique of the various mayors of New York, both their style and their substance. And I just, every time I watch you guys interact, I feel like I become smarter because it like I said, what was cool about it is you never would hear that conversation anywhere else. Between the two of you, it was this mix of literally the style, which you're very well known for, but then also the substance of their policies and the impact that they had. I loved the conversation that you had, and you could tell that you guys enjoy a great friendship.
Well, let's see if I can remember this. We were talking about the current mayor, Eric Adams, who is an unmitigated disaster. Just to be clear, Eric Adams ran for mayor as a full-throated advocate for New York City being a sanctuary city. So the idea that Eric Adams was ever opposed to open borders is just categorically untrue. His criticism of the Biden administration was that they didn't give him the millions of dollars to pay for the problem that they created. But at the same time, he put homeless shelters into some of the most stable working class neighborhoods in New York. In Staten Island, he put a homeless shelter with no plumbing facilities, porta potties outside, next to a Catholic girls' school. What kind of judgment is that? So I said that Eric Adams was the best dressed mayor since Jimmy Walker. He was the most corrupt mayor since William O'Dwyer. He was the shortest mayor since Abe Beame. And he was the most incompetent mayor since Bill de Blasio.
See, that's what I'm talking about. I didn't even know who half of those people were. And suddenly I have this context of New York City mayors that nobody else but Roger Stone could bring. I think about that, though, in the context of what I believe, and I played this clip in the intro, Roger, J.D. Vance calling you a brilliant political strategist. So let's put your hat on for a second. This Mondami guy, I don't see, we are sitting here at the beginning of September. I think time is in his favor, Mondami, that is, and that this idea that somehow everyone's going to coalesce around Cuomo is ridiculous. I believe that there is, to me, not enough time to stop him, and he is the next mayor. What say you?
Sean, I think you're right on the money. The fundamental problem is the only chance to stop him was in the Democrat primary.
Yeah.
Republican registration in New York City when Rudy Giuliani was a mayor was about 31, 32%. Today, it's about 13%. Also, the ethnic makeup of New York City has dropped very dramatically, meaning the number of white Democrats still left in the city is very low. So you have a completely different demographic mix. On top of that, you have three candidates who are carrying very, very significant negatives. Andrew Cuomo, because of the nature in which of the way he left the governor's office, has a 62% net unfavorable rating. beat only by Eric Adams. By the way, I've never seen this in the 50 years I've been in politics. 73% have an unfavorable view of the current mayor, and that's 40% very unfavorable and 31 somewhat unfavorable. That's really underwater, no room to grow. Curtis Sliwa is actually the only candidate who has consistently gained through every round of polling, 13, 16, 19, 21. He's slowly rising, but even his unfavorable rating is at about 41% last time I looked. That's 20 years of being on talk radio and talking about controversial subjects. But Miandami continues to have the lowest unfavorable rating, somewhere around 38. All that tells me is people don't understand the implications of his policies. Sean, you and I have seen this before. He's selling hope and change. He's telling people that he's the guy fighting the entrenched special interests. He's the guy fighting the dark money, when the truth is his money is coming from billionaires in Malibu and the Upper East Side and Beverly Hills. It's not a people-funded revolution. The number of small individual donations to him is extraordinarily small. It's all big money, and most of it's from outside New York City.
Before we move on, there was I think it was a tweet that you put out that struck, it made me smile, because I say this all the time to people who call me for political advice. Your tweet, I don't have it at my fingertips right now, but it said something to the extent of like, there's some great patriots out there running for office, but for every one of them who says, I don't have any money, but I have a grassroots team behind me, you will lose spectacularly. And I Roger, I laughed when I read it, because I talk to so many people when I say to them, okay, they're launching the campaign. I go, so what's your campaign budget? And they go, Sean, you wouldn't believe the army I have behind me. And I was like, okay, so you're going to lose. And I read your tweet, and I'm like, this is every single person who says that is literally just admitting they're not going to win. You may not like it, but the reality is you need money to get a staff, to pay for signs and advertising and data and all that stuff. And anyone who thinks they're going to run for office without a campaign budget of significance for any office these days, whether it's city council, mayor, or Congress, is nuts.
But you see this phenomena. You saw it with Barry Goldwater. You saw it with Ronald Reagan. You saw it with Donald Trump, where they attract a whole group of new people to politics for the first time. Now, they're not party regulars. They have no previous experience. They're good-hearted people. Their heart is in the right place. But politics today is an expensive, data-driven, scientific endeavor. It's not something where you just run around and talk to Republican clubs and put up yard signs. It takes a huge amount of money, even today, to communicate. Now, the internet has improved that very dramatically. The internet now is the number one way to communicate with voters, and it's far less expensive than, say, network television, or even in the big markets, terrestrial radio. But if you're thinking about running for Congress, let's say, and you intend to do it all by door-to-door knocking and a grassroots activity, we call candidates like that losers.
That's so true. All right. Well, we talked about Rudy Giuliani and the success he had as mayor. I think what he's probably most known for outside of 9/11 is the broken windows attack on crime. This idea that if you really just get at the most basic level of crime, you'll start to solve it. Once you go after graffiti and broken windows, you tackle everything because you can't let anything go. Donald Trump kind of went at D.C. in that way, and he brought in, it's a unique situation because it's a federal district. He deployed the National Guard. He used the federal resources that largely exist here. Everyone's got a police force. I think there's like 28 police forces in D.C. And Roger, I've lived in this area since the 90s. I was around D.C. 4 or 5 times in the last, 4 days. I've never seen it safer in every corner. I mean, and I think Donald Trump has proven that if you want to have a safe city, you can do it. So here's the question I have for you as a political strategist. There's a lot of talk that Trump may go after cities, Chicago clearly being number one on the list, maybe Baltimore. And I would argue that maybe instead of jamming the National Guard into a city against their will, that the White House hold up D.C. as the example and say, look at what we've done in 20 days. Carjackings down, no murders, crime across, like you can walk freely through the streets of D.C. like never before. And basically challenge the people of Chicago or Baltimore or wherever and say, you want a safe city? We can help you do that. Just ask your mayor to tell us that he wants the help or she wants the help. Instead of jamming it in there, I think that we use D.C. as the example of what can happen.
Well, you make a good point. The problem, of course, you have here is that the politicians do not necessarily reflect what the people want. I noticed this in D.C. when average citizens were interviewed to a person, they all said, this is great. God bless President Trump. You know, I can actually walk to the grocery store or the drugstore without fear of being hit in the head or being attacked. My kids can go outside and play without fear of being injured. I think it's a great thing. But you have politicians like J.B. Pritzker. I was on a podcast last night. I was arguing with a liberal who said J.B. Pritzker should be on Mount Rushmore. I said, if J.B. Pritzker was on Mount Rushmore, there wouldn't be room for anybody else. This guy he thinks he can launch a presidential campaign based on the misery of the people of Chicago. And Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, if this guy's IQ was 1 point lower, you'd have to water him like a plant. I mean, several days ago, I swear to God, he said that the rising crime problem in Chicago was the fault of Richard Nixon. President Nixon's been dead for 30 years. How is it his fault? No, I'd say it's your fault for these soft on crime policies. Last year, there were 223,000 911 calls made to the Chicago Police Department that went unanswered. That's because the entire police force is down by 1,600 personnel. Those are 1,600 jobs, Sean, that no one will apply for because no one wants them because the politicians will not back the police officers up in the streets. So they seem to be bent on this idea that they can sell rising crime as an attribute to the American people, which, of course, is untrue. The only way to do what you say is it could be done, which I think is a pretty smart idea, is you would have to get rid of their leaders. You'd have to run for mayor on the platform that if you elect me mayor, I will invite the president to come in here and work with our police department to clean up crime in the city. It could be done that way.
Here's what I don't get, and this is where your years of experience, I want to hear your answer. What I fundamentally don't get is a guy like Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago. There were 50 people plus that were killed this weekend in Chicago. 50. How do you, as a mayor, say, I'm doing everything I can, I'm keeping the city safe, I'm protecting you, when that's the result of one weekend? I just don't get. To your point, it's you're saying that they're selling it. I don't know how you defend it. I fundamentally believe that elections are about two things. One is your personal security, meaning economically. Do you feel like your life is getting better? Do you feel like you can, pay for things or put some money away for a vacation or buy food for your family? And then your personal security. Do you feel safe walking down the street? And I can't believe that Democrats at large, particularly that this mayor in Chicago, are almost embracing crime. It's like, he's like, yeah, what are you talking about? No big deal. No one I know, Roger, and I guarantee you're in the same boat. There's not a person that you can call that lives in the city of Chicago and feels safe. I don't know how a mayor gets away with that.
Right now, Mayor Brandon Johnson has a 6% approval rating. 6%. That's the lowest I've ever seen, and I've been doing this for 50 years. I think he's speaking to some national constituency that doesn't even exist in itself. J.B. Pritzker actually says that shootings were down this weekend. They had 56, I think, is the number of shooting deaths this weekend. Over 116 people shot and wounded, but not killed. This is a crime spree, but they're in denial. Oh no, this is tyranny. Trump wants to militarize all the cities in the country. Look, this is very simple. The first responsibility of the president of the United States is to maintain order. You worked for him as I did. Donald Trump is not a man to be trifled with. He is not a man to be taunted. He is not a man to be challenged. He is intent on being the law and order president and restoring order to this country, and he's going to do it. I recognize that he doesn't have the ability to federalize the Chicago police the way he does in D.C., but he does have the authority to declare, based on the statistics of this past weekend, that there is a national emergency in Chicago and send in the National Guard. And frankly, that's what I think he's going to do. Now, when he does that, some leftist activist judge, who's not really a judge but a politician, is going to try to rule that he doesn't have that authority, and then that'll get appealed. He might even lose on appeal, and then finally, ultimately, the Supreme Court will say what everybody recognizes, that the president does have that authority, just like he has the authority to negotiate better tariff deals for America, just like he has the authority to deport dangerous, illegal criminals. But they're now trying to, as you know, to use the courts, not to stop, because they can't, but to delay the mandate the American people voted for in the last election.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that there's some things that I always thought would be equally bipartisan, like safety, like the idea that you would never, I get that there's different approaches to policing or whatever, but the idea that you, to your point about Brandon Johnson, defending 54 murders and claiming that things are okay is insane. I want to move on, though. There's this, Congress is kind of getting back to work today. And there's a bunch of activity going on the House side in particular with respect to Jeffrey Epstein. The two members, Ro Khanna, a Democrat of California, and Thomas Massie of Kentucky are held a press conference with a bunch of the victims. And then the House Oversight Committee, James Comer, is starting to interview more and more people around that were involved in Epstein. From a political standpoint speaking, I just don't feel like we're handling this situation well. We're keeping it going on an issue where there should be almost finality. So here's what we know, here's what we don't know. But I feel like this Epstein issue should be shut and closed a lot quicker. And I feel like, and maybe this is where I want you to tell me if I'm just wrong on this. Like, we're creating an issue in Epstein that we shouldn't have to create. There's a better way to deal with it.
Well, first of all, Sean, I probably know more about this than perhaps anyone in the country because I wrote a book called The Clintons' War on Women in 2015. The longest chapter in the book is entitled Orgy Island. So when I wrote that book, I had obtained all of the FAA manifest records to show who flew in Epstein's plane and where they went. I also obtained a copy of the little black book that was Epstein's telephone book. Had been sold by Epstein's butler. See, it's always the butler that did it. The butler sold it to a New York journalist who shared it with me. But not everybody in the telephone book was guilty of any illegal or inappropriate activity, although some were. I am totally in agreement with Massie and his colleague. They're going to be very upset when they see who went to the island because they're all Democrats. Bill Clinton, there at least 4 times. I know that because I read the sworn testimony of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, and I interviewed her directly for 6 hours in 2 3-hour sessions. Larry Summers, the former Treasury Secretary, he was a regular on the island. Bill Richardson, the governor of New Mexico, he went there several times. Don't think it was for the weather. Bill Gates, he was on the island. He's a big, big Democrat donor. So name me a Republican who's on the island. There is no answer to that because the answer is none. We know that from the manifests. We know that from the records. So it is notable that the Trump Justice Department moved in Florida and in New York to unseal all of the grand jury testimony, making the argument that Epstein has no right to privacy because Epstein is dead. and his rights extinguished when he was extinguished. But of course, 2 Democrat judges don't want to release that. So watching Dick Durbin, the guy who sponsored legislation to block the list from ever being released, now demanding release of the list is kind of comical. I'm in favor of absolute full disclosure. The Democrats aren't going to like what they find when they do get the full list because there's no Republicans on it. Here's what we do know. Yes, Donald Trump was on Epstein's plane. This has been known for over 30 years. He flew from Teterboro with his wife at the time, Marla Maples, and his daughter, Tiffany, and a nanny from Teterboro, New Jersey, right outside New York City on a Friday to Palm Beach and back from Palm Beach to the same location on Monday. So that proves what? That proves nothing. Unlike, say, Steve Bannon, who went to Epstein's New York apartment, who went to Epstein's apartment in Paris, who did 15 hours of video that I believe was designed to rehabilitate Epstein. This was between the time that Epstein was charged with a sex crime in Florida and prior to his being charged with child sex trafficking by the Trump administration in New York City in 2019. So the sooner we learn everything, Sean, the better. I agree with you, however, this piecemeal approach has not worked. Let's get it all out there. The one thing the president could do, I think he should do, is all those documents that are already redacted should be unredacted with the exception of the victims' names. We do want to protect the identity of the victims. But other than that, all the documents that are already public, and there are many of them, because I use many of them in the preparation of my book, should be released. Why these Democrat judges don't want to release the grand jury testimony in Florida and New York, it's a very curious question. They could be protecting, I don't know, maybe like a former president, like, I don't know, perhaps Bill Clinton.
Yeah. So I agree with you. I think the Trump White House should basically put out as much as they can, stand there and explain it. I think there's certain things that you can't put out, videos of minors, some victim testimony, but just to walk out and explain what's there, what's not. I agree with you. All these people in the past that we've heard about might be at the island all have a D next to their name. At some point, either a donor or an elected politician or someone appointed. I think that the more we get this out there, the better. And frankly, you're going to see a lot of Democrats regret that they pushed this.
Well, and yesterday I talked about this extensively. Now, sudden Robert Mueller's, he's too sick to go speak when he's subpoenaed. Now, there's evidence based on his congressional testimony immediately after the Russian collusion hoax that he was already beginning to suffer from dementia. When he was asked, for example, did you know that Jeannie Rhee, who was the chief prosecutor in my case, had previously represented Hillary Clinton in the illegal server case? And therefore, since I wrote extensively about the Clintons and that email server, that would be a conflict of interest. Mueller said, no, I didn't know that. Well, sorry, Mr. Mueller, that's your law partner. You didn't know what your law partner did. You didn't know who your firm represented. Another time he was asked about Fusion GPS. They're the guys who cooked up the phony Steele dossier. He said he'd actually never heard of them. So just like Joe Biden, I think he was mentally incompetent and a front man during the Mueller investigation, which is really run by the epically corrupt prosecutor Andrew Weissman. Just as Joe Biden was mentally incompetent, I think Mueller was mentally incompetent then and mentally incompetent then. However, the House committee that removed his subpoena did the American people a disservice. I don't care how sick he is. He should show up and testify. And by the way, their argument was not he can't testify because he has dementia. Their argument was he can't testify because he has Parkinson's. I have a relative with Parkinson's. He may have the shakes, but he is mentally extremely sharp. This guy is trying to evade justice. It's amazing. Suddenly they want to talk to him and he's too sick to testify. He should be compelled to testify. They should reinstate that subpoena. And if he doesn't show up, frankly, they should arrest him the way they did Peter Navarro.
Speaking of that, I want to contrast, the arrests and how people are treated. It was amazing to watch all of these leftists run to the defense of John Bolton. And it wasn't until, I don't know, 2 days later where the New York Times sort of let the cat out of the bag that, oops, all this started under Joe Biden. But there was no such concern about how you were treated, how Mike Flynn has been treated, how any of these other people have been treated. And yet when John Bolton, when the FBI went after Bolton, initially it was how, I can't believe these right-wing people are, seeking retribution on him. And this is all about Trump going after his enemies. It wasn't until later that we find out that, Biden actually was looking into him because they picked up foreign surveillance on the top secret information he had.
Yeah, I mean, there's a legitimate reason why he was rated the way he was. Their fear was that he would destroy the classified documents that he was illegally in possession of if he knew a raid was coming. In my case, there is no rationale. They said, we had to arrest Stone by raiding his home at 6 o'clock in the morning with 29 fully SWAT-clad FBI agents carrying M4 assault weapons. They arrived in 17 armored vehicles. There were 2 amphibious units in the backyard because I used to live on this canal, helicopter overhead. Sean, the raid on my home cost the American taxpayers $1.1 million. They said the reason that they arrested me in this manner was that I was a flight risk. I didn't have a valid passport. And thanks to CNN, everybody knows exactly what I look like. Where was I going to go? It's an absurdity. The reason they arrested me in the way they did was to pressure me. That's because they had no case against me. And they later came back and tried to pressure me when they couldn't find any Russian collusion, and there wasn't any, and they couldn't find any WikiLeaks collaboration with the Trump campaign. They wanted to pressure me into lying. They wanted me to bear false witness against the president. They had no case. They wanted me to be the ham in their ham sandwich, and I was unwilling to do so. But I would have simply turned myself in, would have saved the taxpayers $1.1 million. But no, then CNN wouldn't have an opportunity to be 25 feet from my front door. Let me cover that very quickly. I'm arrested at 6:06. At 6:22, Sarah Murray, the reprobate who works for CNN, the non-journalist who works for CNN, sends my lawyer by text a copy of the draft of my criminal indictment, the draft. And it has no court markings or stampings on it. So when CNN says they got it online, that's a lie. But if you look at the metadata tags, you have the initials of the man who wrote it. Therefore, the man who leaked it, Andrew Weissman. That's a felony. But of course, the judge in my case did not care.
Would you want to see, I know a guy like Weissman, because I know you tweeted about this weekend. How should Weissman be treated, knowing what we know now about what he did during the Russia hoax, et cetera?
He should be brought before the grand jury to explain himself. He should, or in my case, I never went to the grand jury, never got a target letter. They use the terror tactic of leaking every week that Stone is about to be indicted. Stone is in Mueller's crosshairs. The noose tightens around Stone. This is a pressure tactic orchestrated by Andrew Weissman. Weissman should be charged. He should be given a fair trial, and he should be convicted. And if he's convicted of seditious conspiracy to engage in treason, Sean, you tell me what the legal punishment for treason is.
Well, I do. It's either life imprisonment or death, I believe.
I mean, look, a judge could choose life in prison over capital punishment, but it's kind of serious. Andrew Weissman engaged in treasonous activity. He should get a fair trial. I didn't get a fair trial in D.C. I'd like to see him get a fair trial, and I'm confident that in Fort Pierce, Florida, which is where this continuing seditious conspiracy ends at Mar-a-Lago, in that raid, I think Andrew Weissman will get a fair trial. I also think he'll be convicted because he's guilty.
Well, let's hope that they actually seek some justice for all these people, because that's the thing. I don't think people fully appreciate what people like you and a lot of the other victims of the Mueller probe went through financially, to your family, to your mental health. And the more we learn, it's just, it's amazing. And the funny thing about this now is you contrast this with what is going on with, say, Lisa Cook at the Fed, or Adam Schiff, by the way. And the thing about Adam Schiff and Tish James, these people who have committed mortgage fraud, And I know I'm not a lawyer or a judge, but at the end of the day, if you have two documents that list the same two different places as your primary residence, neither of which are your primary residence, and you did it to get a lower interest rate, that is mortgage fraud. We have the documents. We know they did it. In the case of Adam Schiff and Tish James, though, it's even worse, Roger. It's electoral fraud. Adam Schiff, according to the Constitution, must live in California. And if he is attesting to a house in Maryland as his primary residence, then he is electorally committing fraud as well. But these guys, the media is acting like somehow this is a witch hunt against Lisa Cook, Tish James, Adam Schiff. They actually committed fraud, and we have tangible, visible evidence of it.
No, you're exactly right. It's even worse than that. You see, they get let's take Letitia James, for example. She signed a power of attorney in which she said that the home she purchased in Virginia would be her principal legal residence. Well, then under the New York State Constitution, she's ineligible to be the New York Attorney General. Now we learn that she's harboring a wanted fugitive at that property. Her niece, who has a long rap sheet and has an outstanding warrant, is living at that house in Virginia. So she's moved from just simple clerical mortgage fraud, which is a felony, to harboring a criminal. Pretty serious stuff. In the case of Adam Schiff, this guy is amazing. His ability to lie with a straight face, never seen anything like it. He goes on NBC last weekend. He just says, it's just not true. It's just not true. This is really simple. He claimed that his condo in Burbank, California was his principal legal residence. He got a state tax break. He got a lower mortgage rate and a lower insurance rate. He said that his home in Potomac, Maryland was his principal legal residence. Once again, he got a state tax break and he got a lower mortgage rate and a lower insurance rate. That's fraud. Sean, if you or I did that, they'd put us in jail. But yes, he thinks that he's above the law. And then, as usual, he tries to lie his way out of it. Lisa Cook, every day we learn about a new transgression in her case. But the worst part about this is the judge, the president fired her, which I believe he has the right to do, for cause. 3 previous Federal Reserve governors resigned when they were under investigation for impropriety, just a historical footnote. But she sued the president, claiming he doesn't have the authority. But the D.C. clerk of the courts referred that case to a black woman judge who happens to be in the same sorority as Lisa Cook. That's a stunning conflict of interest. And then to add insult to injury, the third person who's in that sorority is Joy Reid, a certified moron. So it is beyond belief that the president's lawyers have not moved to recuse Judge Gia Cobb. She has a conflict of interest. They're in the same secret society that's a black woman's sorority. That's a conflict of interest. Judge Gia Cobb is the same one who ruled several days ago that President Trump doesn't have the right to deport dangerous illegals. She's wrong about that too. She's a Trump-hating leftist activist judge, the kind, Mr. Speaker, that your House should begin proceeding motions of impeachment against.
Just to be clear, because if someone's watching this right now, so they belong to the same sorority, does that somehow, do we know that they know each other or that they just belong to the same?
I think it would be immaterial. It creates the impression of a bias. This is a private organization. This goes back to the clerk of the D.C. courts, a woman named Angela Caesar. She's also an African American. Proved to us that there was a random selection. How did Jed Boasberg seem to get every single case that mattered to Donald Trump? Prove to us that you actually conducted with a wheel a random selection. I'm willing to bet you there was no random selection, and therefore she should be charged as well. By the way, Jim Jordan has already complained about this. He's written her a letter and said, we want to see evidence that there were really random selections in these cases. The DC court system is rotten to the core. Even the Republican judges there are biased. And there is no chance whatsoever that you will get a jury of your peers. There was not a single non-Democrat on my jury. We had veterans of the Clinton administration. We had veterans of the FBI. We had veterans of the Obama administration. We had people who had worked on Hillary's campaign. The judge said all of that was fine. We didn't have a single Republican. We didn't have a single military veteran. We didn't have a single Roman Catholic. How's that possible? The answer is it's not possible. It's rigged.
Yeah, it's DC for you. The last thing I want to ask you about is something that kind of caught my eye on your newsletter, The Stone Cold Truth with Roger Stone on Substack, which I highly recommend to folks. The headline is this: Trump should reschedule cannabis on the full way to descheduling it. You've known Donald Trump a lot longer than I have. He is very clear. No drugs, no alcohol, no smoking, no tattoos. Why does Roger Stone...
Unless your tattoo is of Richard Nixon, but yes.
That's right. Okay. There's the exception. It's the I before the E. Explain to me why you think Donald Trump, of all people, is going to declassify pot. And as a conservative, Roger, prior to this big crackdown in D.C., walking through the city, whether it's D.C. or New York, I'm tired of smelling like urine and pot on every single block. It's disgusting. And I don't know why we want to decriminalize it, never mind why Donald Trump would want to do it.
Since 2016, when he got into politics, Donald Trump has always taken the position that this is a states' rights issue, that the states should decide. It makes no sense to have federal law and state law contradict each other. I agree with you. Public use of marijuana should be illegal. Just like carrying an open container of alcohol is illegal. We don't have drinking on every street corner. Here's my belief, and here's how I got into this. My father was dying of cancer. He was in horrific pain. He also had no appetite. So he went to weigh more than 200 pounds to weighing about 125 pounds. They were giving him OxyContin. That was just making him sicker. And it frankly became addicted to it. My sisters and I decided, this was back when it was illegal in New York State, to get him some marijuana. His appetite returned, he gained weight, and he could deal with the horrific pain. So I believe this has a medicinal value based on my own experience. 40 states have now legalized some form of cannabis. So all I want the president to do is to move it from a Schedule 1 drug, where it's classified with heroin, which is ridiculous, to be a Schedule 3 drug where you can solve the banking issues in the states where it's legal. You can solve the taxation issues because the people who are legally in the business aren't in many cases paying federal taxes, and they should be. And then lastly, we can regulate it so it can't be used in public, so you don't smell pot on every street corner. So I think it's a libertarian view, but it is consistent with the president's view that it's a states' rights issue. It's time to bring the state law and the federal law into sync. Okay.
It's a compelling case you make there, sir. Because I'm tired of, I agree with you. I asked the guests the other day from the DC Police Department, why can't I drink alcohol on a corner, but I can walk down the street, smoking a joint? And he was just like, because it's different. I mean, and it's ridiculous. It's insane to think that that's what happens. Roger, I appreciate you spending your Tuesday with us as we get ready to make our way towards the election day season. Lots of great insights here. Thank you for being with us.
Great to be with you again, Sean. I hope to see you soon.
Take care. All right, guys. Thanks for kicking off your week with us. Make sure you sign up for my newsletter. Brand new one drops today on crime at SeanSpicer.com. You're going to want to see that. And we'll see you back here tomorrow on The Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.